Hey guys, day 4. Back home from Mexico now, uh, and I just want to talk a little bit about what I learned during my time in Mexico City. Um, I do have like a list of points here, just want to elaborate on them. The first thing that stood out to me right after the plane lands, how big Mexico City is. Um, I didn't know it at the time, but it's actually one of the largest cities in the world, and the size is just unimaginable compared to somewhere like Smithfield, where there might be one tall building. They are hundreds of them everywhere. I mean, the smallest building in Mexico City is the biggest one in Smithfield. It's wild. And even just the amount of people, like, there's, I don't know, like 100,000 people maybe living in Johnston County, 9 million people living in Mexico City, which is insane. And so it was a completely different environment. Like Smithfield is so like small and quiet, but then every time you're on a road in Mexico City, you always see someone, you always see something happening, which is just very, very interesting. Another big part was the food. Food culture was really awesome. Like we in the U.S. will say like, oh, it's Taco Tuesday, or like maybe one night a week you have enchiladas, but that's not just like food. That's like a part of, I guess, culture for them. Um, it's like you go out and you get food, you go to a street vendor or you go to a restaurant or something, and that's just not like, for us that might be between like us alone or us and our families, but for them it's all the time and it's always like with friends. It's like a huge social experience, which is very different. Like where we live, food is such an individual thing. You make yourself a little dinner, you maybe go out every once in a while and pick something up through the drive-through. But then for people who live in Mexico City, it's like it's with someone always. You're eating with someone. You're talking to someone while you get your food. It's a completely different experience. Um, Another big difference is how people use public spaces. So the weather in Mexico City was always warm. It's not cold in Mexico City. It's like, I mean, obviously for us, it's gonna feel warm, but for them, it feels like normal. But because it's always warm, people are always comfortable to go out and like do something, because even in the winter, like it's not that cold. Like it's still relatively warm, like the 60s. Like I'd go out wearing something like this in that kind of weather. And so people are always outside, and it's not super like gloomy weather like it is today very often. So people just are like, they're always at a market, they're always like on the street or just like in an open area. That's just a huge part of their daily life, and I think that's really awesome. There's also a lot of history in the city. I talked about that a bit, I think, in my third vlog. Um, so more specifically, the capital city, Mexico City, was built on the capital of the Aztec Empire, Tenochtitlan, which is super cool because it means that those people who once lived in the capital descended into the current citizens of Mexico City, as well as their infrastructure eventually became the infrastructure that people who live in Mexico City use today, which is really, really interesting. There's also places like the Zocalo, which is like a huge like public gathering place, one of the biggest in the world actually, and it just shows how culture and history are still a part of their everyday lives. Compared to the U.S., especially smaller towns, I feel like there's a lot more focus on personal space. Like here in Smithfield, I have a lot of personal space. Like anywhere in Johnston County, anywhere in North Carolina, you have like there's a huge emphasis on privacy. But in Mexico City, like community is the heart of everything, and shared experiences are every experience pretty much, which is much different and very almost like radical compared to our lives. Um, Overall, you know, this like whole trip and project really made me think about like how people live in different places and how the culture develops in those places affecting their daily lives. It's just it's really interesting to see how people who live in what would be a completely different world for us are so similar and so different at the same time. And it also made me more interested in traveling and continuing to learn Spanish, because understanding their culture, understanding even like the names of their things, knowing Spanish, knowing how to say those things really makes a difference when you're trying to understand that culture. But yeah, that's I don't really know what else to say. Thank you for watching my vlogs. Tune in for the next trip.